This episode of Freedom of the Pulpit podcast, I will be speaking on my agreements and disagreements with Charlie Kirk, and also how this one song has shaped the way that I think as a Christian and also as an Afro-Latino, and how that has made me view this past week. Welcome to Freedom of the Pulpit podcast, where faith, culture, and lifestyle will collide and will collide harmoniously. I am your host, Reverend Frankie, and on this episode, yes, I will be talking about my disagreements and also my agreements with Charlie Kirk, but mostly I want to break down this one particular song that truly has shaped how I think nowadays, not only as an Afro-Latino, but also as a Christian. This song has been very powerful in my life. And it's a song that most likely some of my constituents, some of the people in my circle, most likely have not heard of. But before we get into this episode right now, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, help me spread this podcast out to others, which you might think that they will benefit from the viewpoints being expressed here. So go right ahead right now. It takes no more than a second, it takes no more than 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button, help this podcast grow. And if you have done so, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart at this moment. Freedom of the Pulpit, thank you at this moment. So by the time of this upload, by the time that most likely you have watched or listened to this episode, it has been a week or over a week since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And there's a couple of people that have asked for my opinion. People within my circles have asked for my opinion. I even got into a verbal friendly exchange with one of my very good friends in regards to this. And this basically what happened ties into a particular song that has truly shaped how I think not only about my Christianity, not only about the gospel, but has truly shaped how I think as an Afro-Latino because I am Latino. I was born and raised in Panama, not Panama City, Florida, but in the country of Panama. And then from there, I came here to live in the United States, to be more specific, here in New York City, and to be even more specific, here in Brownsville, in Brooklyn. So, what has happened in this past week has truly shaken some of us, has truly awakened some of us, has truly angered some of us, and to the extent also have made some people happy. But I don't want to talk about that per se at this moment. I want to speak on my agreements and disagreements because my agreements and disagreements with Charlie Kirk are going to drive home, and that will make sense towards the end. I will explain both sides, but they will make sense also in light of this particular song by this particular artist. This artist has become one of my favorite, if not my favorite artist, ever since I've heard this album. But before I even get there, I want to mention that I personally have grown accustomed to knowing that I think different, and I'm okay with that. I have become aware of that. My pastor one day told me that, and he said that I think in a very unique way. And I've come to the point that I recognize that, especially in the circles that I run in. Now, in some circles, I blend in, right? In particular circles, I blend in. But in the circles that I run in now, as a Latin, Hispanic, Christian man, in those circles, I'm different. And I'm okay with it. I am completely and utterly okay with it. I have grown to be comfortable with that difference, with the way that I think. And it's been because of years of actually struggling to find an identity or even liking myself. Now, I'm going to be speaking about a different artist, but this particular artist, his name is Propaganda. For the past couple of years, he has also become one of my favorite artists. Now, again, I don't agree with everything that Propaganda says, but that doesn't mean that I cannot enjoy his music. And as a matter of fact, his music also has shape in some way, shape, or form, has shaped my frame of mind, the way that I think, and mostly the way that I think as an Afro-Latino here in this country. But one of his songs is called I Like Me. And the chorus of the song is, I think I like me finally. And that song ministers to me so much because it took me a very long time after my divorce to be able to get to a space, to be able to get to a moment where I actually liked myself, liked the way that I was thinking, and liked the way that God was shaping me and moving me. It took me a while. It took me a long time, but I finally got there to the point where I can say, I think I like me finally. And that song from Propaganda truly ministers to me because it just reminded me that, you know what? You might be a little different, but it's okay because now you have gotten to the point where, you know what? I like me. I like the way that I think, I like the way that I see certain things. I like me, finally. What happened to Charlie Kirk is a tragedy. I will have to say is a tragedy because, and I share this with my brother, that Charlie Kirk was killed because of his viewpoints. Charlie Kirk was assassinated because some people did not like what he was saying. Some people did not like his viewpoint. So they decided to take it upon themselves to silence him and take him out. Which, if you really think about it, what he did is that he ignited a fire under those people that looked up to him, or even some people that, even though they opposed his views, now they have decided to speak up and jump on the bandwagon, for a lack of better terms. So there are some things, there are a lot of things that I agree with Charlie Kirk. As an evangelical Christian, I stand against the LGBTQ movement. As an evangelical Christian, I stand against the trans movement. I oppose those movements. But it doesn't say that I hate the people from those movements. As I mentioned before, one of my good friends stands with those movements. But yet at the same time, even though we are at polar opposites, we are able to have friendly exchanges, but at the same time, we're able to be around each other. Because even though our viewpoints differ, we don't allow them to divide us as human beings. So with Charlie Kirk, I stand in those viewpoints as a Christian, as a biblical Christian. I stand with him in those points. A lot of people did not like those points. A lot of people came against him in regards to those points, to those viewpoints. But the viewpoint that I disagree with Charlie Kirk was when it came to the analytical viewpoint that he took towards the Black community. That is where him and I disagree to an extent. And I want to quote this real quick. And it's also from a song. And it's a song by Sho Baraka. And that is the artist that I'm going to be speaking on further in the episode. But I want to take this clip from one of his songs. The song is called Jim Crow. And it says this: come on, son, why you always ruin the mood? Race talks happen every time you enter the room. This is his friends talking to him. And his response is, there's ignorance in the masses Too many people think racism is past tense. We fight for blackness, but we don't know what black is. I know it ain't the zero sum of white men. If you don't know what zero sum is, look that up. That is very interesting. It is a viewpoint that generally says the gain of someone, it was the result of the loss of someone else. Very interesting viewpoint. But this is what he says in his song. I know it ain't the zero sum of white men. They want to know how to reach the hood like there's magic, like we're all the same, like we're not dynamic. And this is where I differ with Charlie Kirk because of this viewpoint here. Because to say that racism doesn't exist anymore, I believe that is a very narrow minded view. Now, I'm going to go and extend this a little bit more and say that racism is not only between white and black, but racism also stands from black to white. Because last week, we witnessed a young lady, white young lady, be murdered by a black man. And it seemed as if this man was triggered because of how she looked. But let's not just be oblivious to just that. And let us not only see it in that manner, because even in the hood, we portray racism towards Asian. Even in the hood, we portray racism towards Hispanics. And the reason I say it that way is because growing up, people didn't see me as Hispanic. People saw me as a black man, an African American. And I had to correct that. I'm an Afro-Latino. But they didn't see it that way. They saw it as, no, because you are dark-skinned, you are black, so you are an African American. But I saw that racism towards Hispanic, which put me in a predicament because I would let them know, no, but I'm Hispanic. But at the same time, living in the hood, I also witnessed racism from Hispanics to African Americans. So racism wasn't from one race to the next or from black to white. I saw racism from every other race towards another race. But to say that racism no longer exists, I think that is a very erroneous viewpoint. Does it exist as prevalent as it was back in 50s and 60s and even further back? No. But to say that it doesn't exist, I truthfully believe that is a very narrow-minded viewpoint. And this is where I disagree with Charlie Kirk, because he believed that racism no longer existed. I disagree. It still exists in different forms. But besides that, there were a lot of other things that I agree with when it comes to his speech, when it came to his rhetoric. But let me get into this song by Sho Baraka, as I mentioned before. The song is called Maybe Both, 1865, and it's from the album The Narrative. Now, I have to say this. That album, The Narrative, has completely and utterly changed my life. If I ever get a chance to meet Sho Baraka, if he ever watches this, I will let him know that his voice has truly changed me and changed me for the better. I give my spiritual parents the credit for building the foundation that I have. My spiritual parents were very instrumental in the foundation that I have as a Christian man. So I will always give them credit for that. But from that foundation, I was able to stack and edify and build who I am. And since 2016, since the first time I've heard the narrative, my mind has been shifting and seeing my neighborhood, seeing my religion, seeing my skin seeing my origin different. And it's been because of that album. So if I ever get a chance to meet Sho Baraka, I will let him know you have been very intricate in the way that I think, and I want to thank you. Thank you so much for allowing yourself to be used by God to write those lyrics that till this day are impacting my life. But the song goes like this. And from the beginning of the song, the lyrics impact me right away. And it goes like this. He says, I'm looking for a happy ending. I said, we never had happy beginnings. I'm on my knees. I'm praying. I'm on my knees, but now I'm an easy target for them to attack me. And what I take away from that, first and foremost, is the notion of looking for a happy ending, of turning things around. But he turns around and says, we never had happy beginnings, which allude to the 400 years that Black folks had to go through in this country. The struggle that Black people had to go through until now. So to me, right then and there, that's powerful, because Black people here in this country, and to be very clear, that's who I'm going to speak of, because that's the race, so to speak, right, that I identify with the most. Because if you look at me, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a Black man. Hence the reason why I label myself now an Afro-Latino. But right off the rip, he's talking about it. We never had happy beginnings. So the beginning of our race, we were already at a disadvantage, because our beginnings started with chains and shackles. I continue with the song. Liberals and intellectuals justify my anger, but when the cameras ain't here, they nowhere near. Oh, so eloquent. Watch them pontificate when the smoke clears, the blogs rebuild real estate. You sitting in your academic tower, tweeting around the hour while the poor fights the power. And this line right here made me think of Charlie, because it's easier. And once again, I never knocked him for this. I never knocked him for this. But Charlie Kirk was very analytical with the Black struggle. And was he wrong for being analytical with the Black struggle? No. He looked at the numbers, he looked at the statistics, and that's what he ran with. That's what he had to present. But for somebody that actually lives it, it's a bit different. Hence the reason why I mentioned the prior song before of Sho Baraka, Jim Crow. The fact that they want to reach the hood, but we're not the Magic Negro. Magic Negro, if you don't know what that is, I just learned it this week also. Look it up. That in itself is very interesting. Being the Magic Negro. And to basically sum that up real quick, is basically thinking that we are all the same, or representing somewhat of an Uncle Tom type of attitude. But Sho Baraka said it in his song, Jim Crow, like there's magic, like we're all the same, like we're not dynamic. It is not that easy to pinpoint the struggles in the hood. And yes, we can talk about it and divide it, especially those that are still here. So I agree with Sho Baraka when he says we are dynamic. The problems are not that easy to fix. But what did Charlie have? Charlie had numbers. He didn't grow up in the hood. So I cannot knock him for that, for bringing the statistics. There's no way that I'm going to knock him for it, even though there was a slight disagreement between him and I. But I continue on the song. It says, oh, stop it, you and your nonprofit with a heart full of promise based on bad economics. Put your ballot in the ear, pull out a lighter, then burn it. We just give away votes. Make them Democrats earn it. And I didn't understand that until I learned more and more about Reconstruction and the Great Migration. Because during the period of Reconstruction, which began after 1865, when we received the proclamation from Abraham Lincoln of emancipation, we begin to see Black people in office. And those Black people weren't part of the Democratic Party, they were part of the Republican Party. Because the majority of the Democratic Party were in the South. And if you know any history of the South, of this country, you're going to hear about the Confederacy. And the Confederacy was racist. And the Confederacy wanted to keep Black people enslaved to the point that the South passed Jim Crow laws. So you really, as a Black man, couldn't be part of that. But the Republican Party were the first one that allowed Black people, Black men, to sit in office, to sit in the Senate, to sit in the House of Representatives. The Republican Party were the ones that allowed Black men to hold seats in governmental offices. And those first Black men that did it, the majority of them were pastors, were religious leaders. So that's the reason why I mentioned in a previous episode that I am a liberal Republican. But that is the main reason. The fact that the Republican Party was the first party that was giving us a right to try to change some laws or try to bring the Black people up. I continue with the song. It says, politicians don't care because they don't see a need. They won't care till we bleed on the same concrete. We burning down the neighborhoods where we live at. If we don't own it, well, let's do something to change that. It didn't change. It ain't doing much now. Watch the philosophers argue while Rome burns down. So we think that ownership in the Black community, it was going to allow us to come up. But here he's saying it didn't do much for Watts. Watts is a neighborhood in Los Angeles, California. It got to a point, even though he's saying here, watch the philosophers argue while Rome burns down, it also alludes to the fact that there was a riot in Watts and Watts burnt down. So basically saying, what are we doing to our own neighborhoods? What are we doing as Black folks to uplift our own neighborhoods? We thought that owning property was going to do that, but it didn't do anything for them. So what exactly do we need to do to change our own neighborhoods? So this is a problem that we have because our neighborhoods by us are still struggling to come up. So there's a shift of mentality that must happen with us. And statistics and reports can't really show you that. There's gotta be more. We are not all the same. We are dynamic. I continue with the song. He says on the second verse, why stop now? I haven't caught the Holy Ghost yet. Sing a little louder. We can drown out the protest. Rebuilding antebellum, they too busy to listen. I hear disturbing things come from so-called Christians. In that line right there, I hear disturbing things come from so-called Christians. And that is exactly what's happening this week. We are yelling at each other from different ends because there are some believers, there are some Christians that believe that Charlie Kirk was a racist, and there are some Christians that believe that he wasn't. The disturbing thing is how strong the message is and how opposing we are when it comes to that. And personally, the line before that, when he says, I stop now, I haven't caught the Holy Ghost yet, sing a little louder, we could drown out the protest, to me is personal because in another song, he says, I used to be scared of the Holy Ghost. Now I'm just scared of them holy folks. And to me, it's personal because sometimes we become a little too holier than thou, and we don't want to speak about certain issues because we don't want to ruffle certain feathers. And in the book of Isaiah, chapter 65 and 66, if I'm not mistaken, in chapter 65, speaks about God and his people saying, get away from me, I'm holier than you. And that is a scary place to be in, because God himself said in the book of Isaiah that he wasn't going to listen to those people. As a matter of fact, the people he was going to bring in was those that rejected him before, but now see him as holy, and they want to come in. And this holier than thou attitude that we had taken in our stands this past week, it's crazy, because as believers, whether we agreed with his viewpoint or not, we should have some sympathy about the life that was lost only for expressing his viewpoint. And not only expressing his viewpoint, one of the things that I love that Charlie did was the fact that he allowed people to come up to the mic and express their viewpoint, and they would have an exchange. So he gave people the opportunity to come up and express how they felt, but not only express how they felt, but also to back up what they were saying. Most of the times, they couldn't back up what they were saying. It was off feelings and emotions. Yet he was bringing facts behind it, or he will back up what he was saying. But that's all he did. He expressed his viewpoint. He put a mic in the middle. He allowed you to talk. He allowed you to speak. And this holier than thou attitude of, well, I'm not going to, quote unquote, celebrate him because of the things that he said. How about the fact that the man lost his life for just expressing his viewpoint in a calm manner? And a child lost their father. 2 children lost their father, and a wife lost her husband, not too far away from where they were standing. So I'll continue with the song. It says, to justify your man's death because of a criminal record or how a man dressed. Thugs, I guess, only perfect people get grace. If that was the Lord's way, there'll be no one in the faith. True flaw. America kills and hides behind the law to purchase this land with violence, but never count the cost. I love this next line. It says, put $1 to your ear, you can hear the moaning of a slave. America the Great was built off the labor that they gave. So this country was built on the backs of slaves. And that aspect cannot be erased. We cannot stop talking about that, because how people are supposed to grow if they don't know that there's advantage that a specific group of people had to face. So we're trying to hide that. We're trying to hide that. And I disagree with that completely. We have to let people know this is how this country was built. Let's not forget that. And let's not forget that so we can now become better. The next time, if we have to do it again, let's do it better. So I love that line. And I love the rest of the lines too. It says, Jefferson and Washington were great peace pursuers, but John Brown was a terrorist and an evildoer. Who was John Brown? John Brown was a white abolitionist. John Brown, and I made my friend do this. I told her, look up John Brown and see if he looks a specific way. And she said, he does. And I said, he doesn't seem like somebody that was pro-black, that was freeing slaves. But John Brown was a white abolitionist. And John Brown was killed, hung as an enemy of the state because he was freeing black folk. But I continue with the song. But John Brown was a terrorist and an evildoer. Oh yes, God bless the American Revolution, but God ain't for all the riots and the looting. Now, yes, I disagree with the looting, wholeheartedly disagree with that. But what he's trying to say is, what's the difference between that revolt and the revolt of the revolution? Because I remember in the revolution, it was no taxation without representation. And what happened? They started throwing the tea into Boston Harbor, which that's where we get the Boston Tea Party, right? So he is saying, what is the difference? But this is the ending of the song, and this is what really impacts me. He says, where's your standard? Where you stand? What's your views? What gives you the right to think the way that you do? Is it school? Is it news? Is it man's wisdom? Is it religion? Why listen when you can make your own decisions? So, in this moment, in this part of the song, he's basically saying, where are you getting your information from? Where are you standing? Who is feeding into you? Who is the one that's giving you your information? Who is the one shaping your viewpoint? Where are you getting this from? And we're living in an era where you can get that from anywhere now. You can get it from, of course, naturally TV. You can get it now from your computer. You can get it from your phone. Your phone that's in your hip pocket, in your back pocket or front pocket, or whichever pocket you decide to put your phone in, you can get that information and you can get lots of it, which will begin to shape your viewpoint. But again, because we have different viewpoints, it should not lead me to hate you. We can have our differences. Let us hash out our differences. But how can we be like a Jordan Peterson and a Sam Harris? Who are those two people? Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris are two intellectual beings that have opposing views. Sam Harris being an atheist, Jordan Peterson being a theist, now a Christian. Those two gentlemen, highly intelligent, can sit down, have an articulate conversation, and at the end of the day, be able to part ways and go hug their wives, go hug their children. You can look it up. Conversations between Richard Dawkins, Stephen Hawking, and John Lennox. Opposing views, yet they're able to speak and not offend each other, but present their viewpoints. That's all Charlie was doing. Present your viewpoint. Here is mine. I give you the mic to present yours. Speak. And then the ending of the song is like this. It says, it's funny how some people see the Lord, so see him as a pacifist, so see him with a sword. And before I continue with this part, this is the part that truly has shaped how I see my Christianity, because it points to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. It says this: some see him as a pacifist, some see him with the sword. The Lord, who hated sin, showed grace to the thief, saved the lonely prostitute from being stoned in the street. He was holy, but he hung with the sinful, drove out the wicked by flipping over tables in the temple. He took a wrongful death, yet he remained silent. But he said he's coming back and he is bringing violence. Many people isolate him just to make them fit their cause, never to involve in a greater context at all. So are there two Christs totally unrelated, or maybe there's one Christ and he's truly complicated? So this is the same Christ that was so angry that he flipped tables in the temple and started whooping people, but yet he saved a lonely prostitute from being stoned. The woman caught in the bed of adultery from being stoned, sat down with sinners. One of his disciples was a tax collector, one of the most hated people in those times. This was our Christ. He took a wrongful death, yet he remained silent. But he said he is coming back and he is bringing violence. Because Christ himself said, I didn't came to bring peace. Some people take this out of context. But he said, I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. I came to bring division between father and son, between mother and daughter. And yes, some people take those verses out of context. But what he is saying is that it's either you choose me or the world. It's either me or them. That is the division. There is no in between. So this Christ that we worship, this Christ that we praise, if we look him up, if we read the gospel, The Christ that we praise, the Christ that we worship, was hated by the conservative leaders of those times. So I have to say that Christ in those times was radical. But yet he said, I did not come to abolish the law, but I came to uphold it, to complete it, do it. Paraphrasing. So this Christ that we worship, is there really two Christs? Or maybe there's just one Christ and he's truly complicated. We can't put Christ in a box. This song has taught me that, and this song has truly shaped how I think when it comes to my own relationship with God, and also how I present the gospel to others. Jesus was a loving man, but at the same time, Jesus was a consuming fire. He calmed the peace. He calmed the storm and brought peace. Yet at the same time, he will call the religious leaders, you pit of vipers. He was sharp. So is that Christ? Two different people, but once again, was he just one Christ and he was really complicated? Or maybe it is both. Maybe it is both. Maybe both. If you made it this far into this episode, thank you so much. Once again, please do not forget to hit that like button. Hit the like button right now. If you're watching, if you're listening, hit right now. Hit that like button. I want to thank you for doing that right now. And signing off from Freedom of the Pulpit podcast is your brother, Reverend Frankie. And I'll see you on the next episode. God bless you and God keep you.